Welcome to the DraftKings Pick6 series here with Josh and Nate. We are rolling along with a college basketball strategy edition of these videos here for you. If you're not yet familiar with DraftKings Pick6, we have a entire series running for you guys, so you can make sure to check all the videos that we put out so far, about 6 of them, I should say, to help you guys with things like how to play this game, exactly what it is, how the payout structure works, and then we get into some specific sport strategies, such as this one for college basketball. Also have NFL and NBA up. Going to have college football for you as well. And we'll even have one just dedicated to the promos that are running, which are very nice here on DraftKings Pick6. For those of you who do not yet have a DraftKings Pick6 account, which, by the way, is super easy, as you can just go ahead and use your DraftKings account and then transfer money back and forth between the Sportsbook and Pick6. So really nice options here. But we should start out, as we're in college basketball, with the areas that it's not allowed, because most of these states do allow you to play college sports in terms of the props specifically, which is what we're dealing with here, player props. But there are a few states that you want to check out here. We'll have that link up for you guys as well, so you can make sure that this is eligible for you in your area. This is specifically for college basketball and football player props, where certain states have decided that they don't allow that type of betting in their state on any sports book. So just keep that in mind. But Nate, let's go ahead and run into a couple of things here that we're looking at as we talk about this college basketball strategy.
Yeah, I mean, we do have another video up about NBA strategy and those daily videos, but there are some significant differences in the college game, and that's basically where you have to start if you're picking props in college basketball. As we know, Pick6, you basically pick between 2 and 6 player props, more or less, as you can see on the screen. If you get them all correct, you will win a share of the prize. If you get only one wrong, you'll probably also win a share of that prize. So in terms of trying to find the over-under, I mean, because the college game is a lot choppier, the halves are shorter, and the shot clock is longer, you're going to see a lot lower props. I mean, you wouldn't see the highest prop here, 19.5 points for the slate. You would not see that in the NBA by any means, but that's where we're at. I mean, sportsbooks will adjust for this by putting up lower numbers, but at the same time, you can probably hit a lot more unders in the college game than you could in the NBA. Just predict, because even when we're talking about rebounds, like, it's not even as clean a game in terms of securing the rebound. Like, one guy might be able to have a big rebounding game, but there's a lot more fouls on the rebounding action. There's a lot more team rebounds. It is scrappy. The possessions are longer, so there's less available rebounds. So more fouling in general, less assists. It's all, probably on the downtrend, except maybe 3-pointers, I guess, shorter 3-point line. But that all depends on the system. I think when you're talking about a college basketball team, something we can get into later. But in general, you just want to be aware of those differences if you're kind of recalibrating when going from NBA to college basketball and thinking about what the numbers are going to be and how you want to attack over or under.
Right. Yeah. A lot more rebounds that seem to fall to the ground. So now it's more of a loose ball situation in those scenarios. And there's, like you said, it's going to be a little bit choppier overall and slower for the most part, or at least fewer possessions, as we know, with a 40-minute total game there. So they also consider differences like the shot clock, obviously, as well as half court violations. Do you have longer to get over? That type of stuff you want to keep into consideration. But overall, pretty much, the differences here are going to be less fluid, less smooth of a game than the NBA, which leads to fewer bloated stats, if you will. But there are things to keep in mind here that are big differences in terms of the matchups as well. When you look at the way that in conference rivalries, home court advantage in college basketball, where it could be Tuesday night versus Kent State or a team you don't care about, and you're still getting up for it with, anywhere from 7 to 18,000 crazy people, the college basketball fans. And you need to consider that. I think home court and rivalries are the two keys here that are we should talk about in terms of the difference in the way that the matchups work out. When you have the home court in college, give that a little bit more of an edge than you would to an NBA game where maybe the stands aren't always full, or maybe it doesn't really matter because these guys are professionals and it's a bigger stadium. It's not quite as loud. And the home court advantage is probably going to be a little bit less impactful in the NBA than it is in this college game. So you want to consider that. The other thing would be the rivalries in conference, and to a degree, some of the blue bloods when they play as well, just sort of, career-long rivalries for some of these schools as well. That's all super relevant. And in those games, going to see a lot closer games. Kind of like the NFL in that sense, right? Like I'm less likely to just go, oh, the Ravens are better than the Browns. Let me pick the Ravens when they're playing an AFC North rival. Same goes for this. And look, we've got a lot of mishmashing of conferences these days. So new rivalries are being formed, but familiarity breeds rivalry. And the coaches end up not liking each other a lot as well. And in college, which we'll talk about a little bit more, the coach and the identity of the coach is even more important probably than in the NBA. I would say definitely than in the NBA, although it's still important in the NBA. But keep in mind that the coach is the only staple. It's the only the guy that's going to continue to be around no matter what in 3 to 4 years from that moment in time, short of them taking their talents elsewhere, obviously. But for the most part, you can bank on that kind of stuff. And that's what I'd be looking at when it comes to the rivalry games. How have these teams played before? Because they're going to play each other tough, and how they did last year is still going to be pretty relevant with the same coach and system in place.
Yeah, and the schedule context as well. There are no back-to-backs in college, right? So that's a huge difference with the NBA. You try to identify these rest advantage in different spots in the NBA, but they should be able to give a full effort in every game in college. True. And I mean, it is much more of a program, of a system where you have to give a full effort, or you could get benched, or the coach would just ream you out, whatever. Like, so you have more consistency, but that also goes for defense, right? I mean, people aren't slacking out on boxing out. They're not slacking on guarding you 90 feet. Yeah. So, I mean, that all contributes to this choppiness that we see in the game, and more unders at times, more fouls at times. So yeah, it is definitely something to be aware of with both schedule and the differences there. But I mean, we talk about college basketball as we know it in the last couple decades. It has really changed in the last few years. I mean, as all college sports have since the pandemic, much more player movement, transfer portal, and that's led to a lot of increasing parity and a smaller talent gap. So, I mean, this is more true in college basketball than football, but I think it's also true in football. But very true right now in college basketball, that there are still your blue bloods, Duke, UNC, and they still get the premier recruits once in a while. But that doesn't mean that they're just going to roll over anybody. I mean, because you oftentimes have these blue blood recruits who are freshmen going up against a well-established team of juniors and seniors who don't plan to go to the NBA and therefore have been together. They've been tougher. So, I mean, when you look at that and you pair that with like thinking about home court and like, well, is this team going to really be intimidated going to Cameron Indoor Stadium if they're all seniors? Like, they're probably going to be much better poised to do that, especially if they have a poised coach, an experienced coach, right? So keep that game close. And so this stuff is all important. I mean, it probably applies more to betting lines, but it's also very important when you talk about game script with the college, with picking college props, right? Because you need to know, is this going to be close? Is it going to be competitive? And is this road team going to be able to succeed on offense if I'm taking an over on one of their guys, right? Or do I think, they don't have the guns to do so, and then I'm going to take the under. So that's all part of like trying to map out the game in your brain before you try to make a pick.
And I mean, what's more important than understanding who's playing, right? I mean, and understanding who's going to get the minutes and who's going to get the bulk of the usage, that type of stuff. It can be tough when you've got a deep bench and maybe some guys you haven't heard of with less coverage, that type of stuff. But I will finish the point that you're making here by saying, when you've got guys that have been, for forever, since college basketball was around, you've probably had players who were capable of playing for better teams, but everybody wants to go to the blue bloods. Everybody wants to go to the bigger school and nowadays you can still get paid with NIL if you don't go to those schools and get the best treatment and the best facility, whatever. Well, you're making money if you choose to take the payment that you can get from a different school, even if it's not as good of a program, and you can still get to the NBA with your just individual shine and individual accolades. That'll still get you there. They don't really care if you won too much in college basketball, which might need to be considered a little bit more. But at the end of the day, it's not what gets you into the NBA. And these guys, especially these days, are doing this to get to the league. So they're going to go to Sam Houston State and play 40 minutes instead of playing behind a top recruit at Duke to get their minutes, get their shine. That's how you get to the league. You can't do it playing the bench, and you want to have at least 1 or 2 years to be able to show your stuff in college. But the other thing, the last thing I'll briefly mention here, that's a next sort of logical step is, know who's playing, know the players. It takes a lot in college, but shop those lines, find the market inefficiencies. And I think the strongest way to do that, I mean, we talk about that no matter what, but the strongest way to do that in college basketball and then use that info for DraftKings Pick 6 is to have an understanding of which guys are going to be out there. Watch some of the games, but do the best you can to find that local news. I mean, I've been saying it for a while now too, on my channel. Like when I'm looking for, is this guy going to play well tonight? He's coming back from injury. This guy just got inserted into the starting lineup. Is he good? I've never heard of this guy. Well, there's too many players in college basketball, know all of them. There's beat writers doing that work for you. Literally Google the player's name, the coach maybe as well, to see if the coach said anything that came out in a news report. But information and qualitative information like that is so freaking key in college basketball, when from one game to the next, the coach might be bringing in new guys that you haven't even heard of coming in and making an impact. So it's important to at least understand things like what could happen. Is there a guy that has been said he's going to get more run in this game than has been expected before? Because there's so many games in college basketball and football, but especially basketball, it's harder for these books to cap these things correctly. And we know that here on DraftKings Pick 6, these lines freeze. So when new information comes out, right, Malone here is going to stay at 11.5 points if it comes out that he's not starting next game, or he is, and he's going to. But you get my point here, is that the news and the updates will help you throughout the week as these lines come out, because once they're up, this ain't changing. So new news, you can really take advantage of a stale line in that situation.
Yeah, and there's bigger inefficiencies in terms of discrepancies between books and college, because there are more games, because the odds makers are not as sharp in terms of lining up and getting on the same page, right? So that's what we mean by when we say shop around multiple books, and then you can kind of get an idea to say like, oh man, this is 13.5 at some books, but I see it at 16.5 here. So I'm seeing some value there. But yeah, I mean, finally, when you think about the college game, there's more continuity with coaches for sure. I mean, the NBA, there's constant turnover, so these coaches are able to really implement a system that you can rely on in terms of projecting the game, and that goes for both sides, right? I mean, if you're going up against Syracuse, they're going to play that 2-3 zone, and you're going to maybe want to target some more 3-point shooters, because that's going to be necessary, or somebody who can facilitate from the high elbow and get some assists that way. So on the other side, yeah, like is this a coach that likes to play fast and is going to get his guards running and gunning, and therefore, kind of increase the pace of this game so that we're not just taking unders as if we expect it to be a slow down game. There's all sorts of websites where you can find these stats, where you can find the trends, where you can find how a coach does against the over-under or against the spread, and kind of apply that to your research, because we're not just talking about how the players are going to do here. I mean, it's a coach's game more so than the NBA. I think we could argue once again that these coaches have more impact on how their program is run, how they want to approach the game, and who they want to give more touches and more playing time to, which is really the biggest key, right? Is just figuring out like who's going to be involved and who's going to be on the floor.
Yeah. 100%. I was just thinking how funny it would be if Ime Udoka was in college. He almost seems like a college coach with how he plays he coaches the NBA. He's the only guy I can think of that would bench somebody who's a starter. He doesn't care who you are. And that's college to me, is like, for the most part, I don't care who you are. If you have a bad attitude, you're not going to get burned here. You're not going to really succeed here in our program. And some coaches will deal with that. Some won't. But to your point, in college, those coaches are going to be it. If you just blindly follow the coaches and don't necessarily even know the players on their team, you'll probably still be in better shape than knowing nothing about the coach and only understanding player tendencies. So that's all the time we have for you, though, in the college basketball strategy episode. Hopefully you guys are getting something out of this series here and learning a lot about DraftKings Pick 6 as we roll along. So continue to follow along, subscribe to that page so you don't miss any of the rest of this series. And until we see you next, happy betting.